Hey guys, this is Mac again, and welcome back to my channel. I really appreciate you joining me for today's episode of 3-Gun Life. In this middle portion of the series, we've been focusing on each individual handgun, and I don't think you want to miss today's episode. I think a lot of people will relate to this one. Today we're talking about the handgun. That's what's coming up next in today's episode of 3-Gun Life. The handgun really offers the most flexibility of any of the three guns that we use in 3-Gun. That's because I think a lot of people have some experience with USPSA or IDPA or one of the other shooting sports when they migrate over to 3-Gun. And you can take pretty much any handgun you have at home and go out and shoot a 3-Gun match quite easily and usually do pretty well. So that's why I think the handgun actually might be most people's favorite part of 3-Gun. It's probably usually the least stressful and also the easiest to get used to. But I'll counter that by saying that it also takes the most practice. Handgun skills can deteriorate very quickly, so you got to practice a lot to stay on top of your game. Now there really are two schools of thought on types of handguns for 3-Gun. There's striker-fired pistols, which are usually the polymer type pistols like Glocks or M&Ps. And that's what I've been shooting ever since I started 3-Gun. I've been rocking this Glock 34 for a long time, and I really like it. Now the second is the 2011 style handgun. And that's what most of your pros and your upper level type 3-Gun shooters usually migrate to. There's a lot of accuracy potential and they are really high quality handguns, but the investment is enormous. So let's just talk about a few things that you can do to pretty much any handgun you own to get it ready for 3-Gun and to make sure that you get the most potential out of it. The first thing that I want to mention is a really good holster. Now this holster that I use with my Glock 34 is made by LAG Tactical, and it's important for a couple of reasons. Security is paramount in 3-Gun. Security and safety, you're going to have that at every match you go to. And you might have seen someone, or perhaps maybe you yourself, have been disqualified from a match before if your handgun fell out of its holster. So having a really secure holster is very important in 3-Gun. This LAG Tactical Supernova holster is really great and it's extremely secure. The reason why you want a really good holster is because of the repeated motion of drawing your handgun from its holster. And you have to be able to get the same grip on this handgun every time you draw it. Having a really good holster where you can get a repeatable and consistent draw from your handgun is really important. I mean, think about it. On almost every 3-Gun stage, you're going to start with your handgun in its holster. And in order to get it out and engage targets, you have to be sure that you get the same consistent draw every time, because your grip is everything with your handgun. So you want this holster to be very rugged and secure and be able to get the same grip every time. And in fact, some of the best practice that you can have is dry fire practice with your handgun, just drawing it from its holster and doing dry fire with your handgun. Now specifically, some of the modifications that I've done to my Glock 34. One of the most important again is the grip. Now I stippled this handgun, which you can do with polymer handguns. Probably can't do that with some of the more expensive 2011 types, nor would you probably want to. But with polymer on these Glocks, they're really easy to stipple, and it is a fantastic grippy surface, and it's one of the best mods that I've ever done to my handgun. And guess what? It was free. Now one of the most important things that you can add to your handgun is a really high quality set of sights. Now these that I use are Warren Tactical Dave Savigny sights, and they're specifically made for competition. They have a blacked out rear with a huge squared notch and a fiber optic front bead. I personally love the fiber optic front beads, and I like red. Some people like yellow, some people like green, but you need something that's going to really catch your eye and make it really easy for you to acquire your targets really quickly. In addition to that, having a really nice trigger pull is important. On polymer pistols like this Glock, which are striker fired, sometimes it can be a real challenge to get a good trigger pull. So I'm constantly trying to improve the triggers in all of my Glocks. I've eventually settled with a really nice 3.5 pound trigger pull by changing out some of the springs and the connector in my 34. And I also changed out the trigger shoe. This one's by OC Custom Triggers, and it's really fantastic. Also, you'll probably want to have something here at the base of the magwell, not only to help you get those magazines funneled in quicker, but also to give your support hand a little bit extra grippy surface. So you notice when I put both hands on the pistol here that my support hand is really sitting on the bottom of this magwell, and that really gives me a better grip and allows me to get higher up on the bore axis of my handgun. And these magwells were really designed to help you reload quicker. And this brings me to one of the most important things that you can do, not to your handgun, but to your magazines, and that's base plate extensions. Pretty much every 3-gunner is going to have these because you're allowed to add extensions to give you an extra 5 or 6 rounds to your magazine. So on these 17-round magazines, when I add my extension, not only is it a lot easier to reload, but it also gives me 23 rounds versus the standard 17. That's going to save you a lot of reloads on stages, and it also gives you a little bit more weight at the bottom of the handgun here to balance it out better. So you really are going to have to check into base plate extensions. These are made by Dawson Precision. They've always worked really well for me, but probably the most popular ones are the ones by Terran Tactical, and they work really well. I also have a stainless steel barrel in this handgun. You'll notice that it's titanium nitride coated. That adds a little bit of longevity maybe to the barrel, but it doesn't really improve the performance in any way. However, the stainless steel barrel does. This is a really accurate shooting handgun for me when I am at the best of my abilities. So as you can see, the handgun really is a lot simpler than both the rifle and the shotgun. You can make a lot of handguns work in 3-gun. But if you do a couple of things to get a better grip on the handgun, to make it more secure with a really good holster, to boost that ammo capacity with some base plates, and also get a really good and consistent, smooth, and light trigger job, you really can have a top-notch handgun really very affordably with these striker-fired pistols or a really high-end custom pistol like a 2011. So once again, this is Mac. I really appreciate you joining me for this episode, and stay tuned for episode 9. We're getting close to the end. We're going to talk about some of the other gear that a lot of people don't think about. We've talked a lot about the guns, but what about all the other stuff that you got to load up to get to a 3-gun match? That's coming up in episode 9. Be sure you subscribe to my channel to make sure you don't miss it by clicking on that subscribe link down in the left corner. Once again, this is Mac. Be safe out there, and we'll see you next time.
shouldn't see nothing.